So here we're going to go back to the demo site and we're going to deal with some issues in the CSS. Okay, not really issues, but a lot of times when you download a pre-designed template, there are certain things in the CSS that you just don't like or you want to change or alter. So that's what we're going to do in this lecture here before we get to the drop-down menu. Okay, and some of the things in addition to covering active links, altering basic CSS, and doing some rollovers, we're also going to fix a few broken links at the beginning here, and we're going to talk about the basics of the A tag. People keep asking me, like, how do I adjust how my links look? How do I adjust how my links look? Where is this coming from? It all comes from the letter A. That's the basic HTML tag for links, okay? And then associated with A, you can do active, you can do hover, and you can do visited. So you can format it in a different way, you know, according to whether or not the person has their mouse over it or they've already been there or something, which is a nice user-friendly thing to add into your CSS. All right, so let's get cracking here on the demo site. All right. Okay, so right off the top here, some of you probably noticed that in the demo site I'm missing the background images, and this is something that before the test and when we learned just the full basics of getting the Dreamweaver site set up, getting it installed, getting it set up, we haven't really gone over this a lot since then, and now a lot of people are starting to get a template or start a site from scratch and they're moving files around and they're breaking links. Okay, so as usual, even if it's not a hyperlink, and this is just off the top here, just a quick review of one of these concepts. You can go to check links site-wide, and it will tell you where links are broken. So in the CSS file, it's saying this link is broken. Now I can tell already that more links are broken than that. Okay, there's something going, or sorry, in the style file. So this is where the file is. This is where the link is broken, and that's just something that I created that. Or that I removed. Hang on a second, I got to fix that too. What did I do there? This is something that I removed from the site folder by accident because I had changed it and I wanted to redo the same lecture for you guys, and now it's not in there anymore. So that's one of the broken links. So right away I got to fix that. So I'm going to go and find the original version of the site. Okay. So that's going to be in my site folder, and I can do this outside of Dreamweaver because what I'm going to do is go to the raw folder, and if I really mess something up, I can go back into the raw folder and find any images that I'm missing, okay, and then put those images back in. Okay, so I don't see image active in here. So then I quickly realized that what I'd done is I actually added into the code something for image active.gif that I don't actually need in there because I haven't created image active. It's just not a file in there. So right away I know that file doesn't even exist. I can go into the style sheet and just get rid of it. Okay, so now what's happening here is I'm going to show you guys and remind you that if links are messed up and you're having trouble figuring out where it's at or how to fix it, and you've pulled it up in here and you see that it's broken, okay, just close that out and you can go in here and search for one of the words that's involved in that, and it will bring you to that. So it's not there. Keep going. Oh, weird. Well, that's the only time I link to active. I don't know where this other CSS file is in there. So, that's really interesting that it pulled up that link when I don't even have a link in the file that exists for it. It's probably because it's in the cache, but we're not going to get into that right now. The main thing I'm missing, of course, are all of my image links. And the reason I pulled up check links site-wide to begin with is because a lot of times when you have broken image links, check links site-wide doesn't always show them to you because it's just assuming that the images aren't there yet. But in fact, the images are broken. Now this is a dead link that should no longer be in the cache. We're just going to ignore it. But what we're going to do is quickly go in here, and yours probably aren't broken. But what do we want to do? I had to replace the CSS file with the old CSS file so I could redo everything I did in the other section. And on purpose, I've left the images missing so I could show you guys again how to fix that really quickly. I connected my CSS, but I'm missing the images. Okay? So if I go into the CSS file where it's supposed to link back to images, and there's 3 links in here. There's one there, there's one somewhere else. There could be up to 10, 12, even more than that. What I'm doing is I'm not jumping out of the folder and then going back into the images folder. because the way the site was set up originally in raw, which is where I went to get that, okay, that's how I got that style file back in there to replace the one I'd altered. I went and got the original one, okay, from raw. It used to have the images right next to the CSS file. So I can use Control F, as I've shown you guys, to fix this instead of doing it, because check link site-wide doesn't always pull up the broken links. That's the point of what I'm trying to show you here. A lot of you are at this point now. You're there, you're breaking links. If you can use check link site-wide, that's great. And we'll talk about the library function too. But again, that only works best for hyperlinks. If you have image links and they're going to images folder, they're just not showing up, the system's just going to think that you're going to put those images there eventually. What it doesn't understand is that, in fact, the word images should instead be ... /images. So if you do find and replace any instance of images with this code instead and replace all, it will fix your images. And then when you go back to design view, okay, it just needs to refresh here, or I need to save the file. Sometimes you have to save the CSS file there, or just kind of flip back and forth, and then it should automatically refresh. So that was just a quick show you on getting the images back in there. And another thing I noticed here is, originally when we first set up the demo site, I had made the menu div, here, now we can close this tab group. I had made the menu div a little bit bigger so that it could fit all those buttons. And now it's not that large anymore. So now I'm going to go into the CSS, and I think I remember I changed it from 5 to 600, and then all the buttons fit. Okay, but it jumped down to the next line because I also had to make the logo a bit smaller. And the logo, I have to subtract 100. So why am I showing you this all over again, even though it was in the initial? Because you're going to start to have to deal with this again, okay? You're going to want to change basic stuff in your CSS. I know I did that kind of quickly. Just remember that I'm recording all this. You can pause me anytime. Okay, so now I'm back to the state where my demo site originally was, and this is what I want to talk about. See how that's red? You guys see that? This is red because when I got the template, even though that was the only page it gave me, it was assuming I was going to start with that as my home page. The reason it's red is because of an active class. It's based on a CSS class, like we did with tables in the web workshop. We made a class, and then inside the tag associated with that link, we put the class equals and put in the name of the class, and then it makes it red. So that's all that's going on there. So if you have an active class on a template you've downloaded, or you want to add one in, I'm going to show you how to do that right now. And in the process, we're going to review a lot of the basic structure of the CSS, because if you haven't done the web workshop and you just kind of jumped into this, or you don't remember the web workshop, it's kind of tough to start dealing with the CSS just right off the top. So we're going to get into that a lot here. If we go to code view, sitting on that link, okay, and now this is another thing I want to remind you about. The more stuff you attach to an HTML file, it will all appear here in Dreamweaver. So you'll see a bunch of that come up here when I attach the drop-down menu in my next video. Right now, all I have attached is a style sheet, and without even opening it, I can click on it right there and edit it, and then click back here to get to the HTML. It's something that I don't show you guys enough, and I want to just keep reminding you about it. So sitting here, here's my menu. Here are my 5 menu items. What's different about this one than the rest of these? You guys tell me. So that little thing right there is all that's making it red. Okay, and the reason it's making it red, if I jump into my style sheet, which I can do right here, let's search for the word active. Well, there it is right there. I'm already there. It says if I'm on a link and it's going to have the class active associated with it, make it red. So this isn't some automatic thing that the browser's doing. This is actually a standard format built into your CSS, done by defining I'm in the menu, and whether it's hovering or whether it has this class active, I'm going to make it red. So I'm going to do the same thing for both. Okay, so here's how you deal with that. Right now, I'm in the home page, and in my source code, I see I have class active. Let's say I wanted that off because I'm in a page that's not part of the 6 items in the main menu. I'm in one of my subpages. Don't leave one of these red or highlighted. You know, some of it's just a background color or something. Don't leave it set up like that, because then people are going to think, oh, yeah, okay, well, I guess I'm still on the main menu. I'm still in the main pages in the navigation. you want to adjust that for each page. And it does take a bit of time once you make all your pages. It's a bit tedious. But once you get it on your 6 or 7 or 8 menu items, whatever it is, you set each of them to the appropriate active class. Then all the subpages below that, you don't really need it on there at all. Okay? Why would you have it on there if you're not on one of those main pages, right? So this is the home page, so I want to put it back on. So I'm going to show you in Code View and WYSIWYG View how to do that. If I know the name of the class, and I know it's associated with the line items in the menu, and I know it is with my CSS, I simply go after the line item, type in class equals, and then it will autocomplete for me. It will tell me as soon as I type a letter, it'll start all of them that start with that letter. It'll put that one right at the top. Even without typing the letter, I think it should just still be there. Okay? I double click on it. I don't even have to type it in. That way you don't get typos. So as soon as I put that back in there, it's red again. Okay? That's showing the people that on this page, this is the home page because it's red. When you navigate through to the other pages, it should switch for each page. Okay? In Design View, now this is a line item class code. So if you click, see how it says active? If I just go here and go to none, it won't take it off. The reason for that is because it's associated with the line item. So if I have to click on the line item in the tag inspector, and then I can go here and go to none. And if I want to turn it back on any of these, and I'm going to go back to the home one, I click on the line item, and I go here, and I go to active. Okay, so that's how you turn it on and off. That's the active class. It's red on the home page. It should be. Let's say I wanted to fix it on the rest of my pages, and it is fixed on most of them, but I left this one the wrong way so that you guys could see me fix it. So I've cloned my pages. I made a really simple site. You know, it's really all about this blog I have on the one page. I want to make sure that on my 6 main nav items, I set it up so the active class is correct. So when you go to contact, contact is red. And when you load it up, it's red. Why is that? Because in Code View, that one has the active class. And why is the active class red? Because in the styles in the CSS, I told it to make it. So you don't even necessarily have to call this active. You can call it on page or whatever you want because it's a class. You can name it whatever you want. They named it active. It's kind of an obvious name for most of them. When you get templates, you're likely to have that same name if you have one of these things. So that one's good. Locations I still got to fix. Okay? Locations here, I still have it set to be on home, and I want to put it here. So I can either go into Code View, pull it off home, and I can cut and paste it. I can literally just cut it here and then go down to Locations and put it right in there. Or I can do it in Design View simply by picking that. You have to use a tag inspector, right? You got to pick the class it's put on, or the tag it's put on that the class is on. Go to None, go to Locations, pick the tag it's supposed to go on, and go to Active. Okay? So that's why you have the class button in WYSIWYG View. So that's how you deal with that. Now we're going to take it one step further because as I told you at the beginning here, we're covering the active link, but we're also going to change it around a bit. Okay, and we're going to talk about rollovers. I mean, there are more complicated rollovers than just sitting over something and having it pop up, like a hover. But a hover is really, in your CSS, is the simplest way to create what most people call a rollover. And I have students in my course, they go searching for like rollover codes and stuff to get a good rollover in their site. And if I was to take you here, I'll show you an example. Okay, so this is my band, all right? And as you guys know, I don't really play much anymore. It's just, you know, so the web design techniques here are not exactly what I would call exemplary. It's just a band site. It's got one of these landing pages that doesn't have a bunch of calls to action. It's literally a landing page where you go and click into the site. Those are really archaic and should not be used anymore. I just can't be bothered to change my band site around. The reason I'm showing you this is because I have a rollover here. Okay? That's a rollover. I get over the link without clicking or doing anything. I just put my mouse over it and something else comes up. Some people call it a mouse over. A lot of people call it a rollover. I like to refer to it in its simplest form, which is simply altering the hover code for the A in CSS for your links. Okay? So when you hover over something, it changes a bit. Right? Now this one was a little bit more complicated because this is a picture right here that I have in my, it's a JPEG of the album cover with a little kind of TV frame around it. And then when I roll over it, it's the same exact picture but with this text put over it, and this is an entirely different JPEG. So this rollover actually just involved a different background image, and I had to change some stuff in a class style. It's a little trickier than the stuff I'm going to show you, but it's it's still doing it with the basic CSS syntax instead of having some stupid flash rollover or something like that you don't need, and it's not good for optimization. So that's a basic rollover. It may not look like that, but that's all it is. Okay, in your site right now, if we jump back to the demo site, let's look at the style sheet. Okay, so rollover I'm calling hover because that's how CSS refers to it as. And there are complicated rollovers that involve more stuff going on, and I just think a hover code is the easiest way to do it. When you hover over a link anywhere in the site, it underlines it. Okay, so if I go to design view and I go to live, all right, I'm going to scroll down a bit. Come on, catch up, computer. Okay, so these are links. See when I scroll over them? I get a little underline to let people know, hey, you're on a link. And usually the format for a link looks different anyway. It doesn't have to look blue and underlined automatically. Don't have your links underlined anymore. It just doesn't look right. So the way you format that as a whole in your site is by defining the A tag from the very beginning. Why isn't it underlined automatically like so many sites still have hyperlink? Because they said text decoration none. And this is very easily done when you're in the CSS properties. If I were to set up a class for this document, let's just call it tests. And right here, text decoration, none. Okay, then it can't underline it. So I'm going to cancel that. So back up here, that's automatically the way links are going to look anywhere on our page, unless it's otherwise specified subject to another div. So if I have main content, sidebar, whatever, and I don't specify in sidebar what A is going to look like, it's automatically going to look like this. We want to change a little bit about the A stuff in our menu, so it's probably not going to be subject to that. It's probably going to be specified in the menu. So this is a review of how the CSS works. When you start a div ID, it's always followed by a number. It's always coming after a number sign. It's preceded by a number sign, and then you have the name of the div. And you can name those whatever you want. They don't have to have standard HTML tags. So this is my menu, 600 pixels wide, it floats left, it's 50 pixels high. This is what the list looks like in my menu. So even though I have some list coding up here, I think I do. Yeah, there's a little bit of list coding up here for UL. There's some, they leave this open for you if you want to add to this. This all came from a template. I'm specifying just for the menu what I want it to look like. So if I'm in the menu and I pull up UL, it automatically will look like UL for menu. I don't have to put menu UL in my code. So when I go into my code here, you can see when I started UL, it just says UL. And the reason UL looks like that for the menu is because I'm in the menu and I haven't closed the div yet. This is important to you guys, even though we've done a bit of the CSS prior to you starting your own sites, to understand the syntax here. So it doesn't matter which page you're on either when you're doing this. It's going to work on any of them. So I want, in my menu, I want it to get bigger when I hover over it. And I want to change the active class too. This is all very simple. Okay, so if it's specific to the menu, and you can tell down here, you're in div menu, okay, when you click on one of these links, it has its own UL, LI, and A. It didn't come before it, it came after it. So if you go into the code, you can see it's coming up. You don't change the code, you change the CSS. And you don't necessarily have to change it in raw code in here. You can use Dreamweaver to do it, which is even easier. Okay, and we're going to do more of this when we get to doing the drop-down menu in the next video, which is why I wanted to go through this with you guys here. So we've gone through the active class. We know how to change that. What's happening when you hover over a link in the menu? Okay, so let's go to design view and go live. It also turns red. And it underlines, which I don't necessarily like. I don't think it needs to do that in the menu. I don't mind that it does that in the page elsewhere, but in the menu, I'd rather it not do that. Instead, I want it to be big. I want it to get bigger when I roll over it. I don't want it to. So are you guys watching? This is really simple. It's simpler than you think. Step number one here, because you actually have a double code, what they've done, and you can do this with a lot of codes within divs. If you want a hover and then you want a class to do the same exact thing, you can just start with menu a hover and then put comma and then put menu and then period, because every class is preceded by a period. Remember, we covered that in the web workshop, and name your class there. I don't want them to be the same anymore. So here's a simple way to deal with this. Go into the CSS, copy the whole thing, go right below it and paste it. Then go up here and delete the first part, and go down here and delete the second part. Did you guys see that? Do you need me to do that again? Okay, I'll do it one more time. If you're watching the video, just rewind it. So again, you may not have a situation with your template, or you might be making your own CSS and you just didn't double up and compound these two things. To save you a bit of trouble, this template came with both of these set up within the same CSS rule. So you had the property and value identical for active, which is a class, so it has the period in front of it, and then hover. I separated them by just copying the thing once and then deleting the second part and then deleting the first part, and now I have two separate ones. This still hasn't changed the way this looks here, but now I'm going to change it. Now that I have two separate codes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into menu A, hover. So, and sometimes you guys are going to find that the tag inspector isn't always the best thing to use. When you're using the tag inspector for basic tags like this inside of a div, it's hard to get the right stuff to come up under current because it's pulling in all the basic formatting from body as well, because it's not a div ID. So when you're using basic tags like that within a div, you should go to all, and you should go down to menu A, hover. So not A, hover. A hovers for the site as a whole. We got to go in the menu, and then we find menu A, hover. Double click on it and change it around. So you know what? I don't want it to underline when you hover over. Instead, I want the font weight, no, that can stay the same. I want the font size to get bigger. Now, it won't get bigger on the, see how the active stayed the same? The reason the active stayed the same is because I haven't changed that. I've separated these two things now. But you can see menu A, hover now has this extra stuff in there. I just added that in Dreamweaver and WYSIWYG. You can type it in too, but it's much easier to just let Dreamweaver do it. Then you never miss a colon or a semicolon. Now, in live view, check this out. Come on, people, look. When I go and hover over a link, it gets bigger, even if I hover over the active. Okay? Now, honestly, did that seem like something that you'd have to spend hours on trying to sort out? Only if you don't understand CSS at all. That's why I'm spending so much time reviewing the CSS syntax here. See? Isn't that cool? Let's say, like some of the templates you're getting, I don't want the active class just to have the red text. I want to really make sure people know when they're on one of these 6 main menu items. So I want to add to the active class a little bit of extra stuff. I want to maybe make the background image different. And this is where I created that additional image and then I added. So this is why that stupid link was in there broken, because I did this in the other section. So I'm going to add a background image to the active class that's different than the background image. Now, how come it's automatically getting this background image? Well, because that background image is specified there, okay, and I don't have it set up. I didn't specify anything here, which means it's automatically going to revert to the most recent background. If I put a background in here, it'll override the previous one, just like the formatting for A in menu that's coming subject to menu is overriding the previous formatting for the page as a whole for A right here. Okay, this is a lot of CSS stuff, but it should make sense to you guys if you understand the basics of how it works. So I'm only going to apply this to menu A active, and before I do it, I want to create a different version of the background. So I'm going to get into Photoshop and see if I can just edit the image and save it under a different name. Okay, so I got Photoshop opened up, and I'm going to go into my images folder for the demo site. Okay, so that's in Sites. I think I have a shortcut to Sites on my desktop now, just so I can get there faster. Sites, demo site, images. So there's the background image for the menu now. So open it up, and it's got a gradient. So I mean, this is going to be kind of tough to really play with it a lot if it has a gradient. If you have just a straight up background color, you can just change it for your active class. It's a lot easier. This one actually came with a bit of a gradient, so I'm going to use the same image, but I'm going to show you a couple tricks in Photoshop where you can actually, based on the same image, change around the colors a little bit. Most of these, when you get them with templates, see how that little lock is on there? They'll come as an indexed color, which means if you go to image and go to mode, you'll see it's an index color. You're not going to be able to do some of the stuff I'm going to show you unless you change it to RBG. Now the lock's still on it, but it's at least the colors aren't locked up anymore. So if you go to image now and you go to adjustments, you'll have it here. I'll show you where it was before on index color. Under adjustments, there's a bunch of stuff you couldn't click on. Okay, So if you go in and you see under adjustments you can't click on the stuff that will allow you to change color, change it to RGB. Then I can go into image adjustments and let's just try color balance. That's usually the easiest way to, let's say I wanted to get some more yellow in there. And look down at the bottom. You can, right now we're in the midtones. I think it might be easier to go to highlights. I usually just play with this until, no, that really didn't, until I can get some yellow. Maybe some green would be cool too, just kind of fish-based. Water, green. Come on, yellow. Maybe shadows. There's a bit of, there. I'm getting a bit of a different tone now. So it's just, that's all I needed. I just wanted to change it just a little bit. I don't want to make it like completely different than the rest of the site. So it's kind of an orangey yellow. And I could, you know, I could spend a little more time on that, but I mean, for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to save for web, and I'm going to save this different version of the background under a new name in my web folder. Okay, and I'm going to save it as a GIF because GIFs are a little more compressed. I don't need any transparency in there that's going to take up a lot of space, which would be PNG 24. So save it as a GIF. Go back to my images folder, of course. That's where I want it. So demo site, images. And instead of image 3, this one's going to be called image 3 active. Now, I'm not too hung up on the keywords in the names of the pictures when they're only used in the background in your CSS. Because those file names are never going to come up actually in your HTML if they're only used for CSS, which means it doesn't really matter what you put in there. You could set a site up so that more pictures are in the HTML so you can use those files for keywords. But in this case, image 3 active is an appropriate name. I have no spaces, no capital letters. You know my rule. I save the file. Now I go into Dreamweaver, okay? So in Dreamweaver, I want to add this. So, you know, sometimes it's even easier not to have to go in here and mess around with this. I can go in here and just steal the background code right above because I'm going to use the same one, okay? Background URL, and then just change the file path to image 3 active, okay? See what I did? Did you guys see that? Instead of going in and finding the style and doing it was even quicker here to just steal the code right above, and this one should override the one then in let's get off live view when you're on the active class, so you can see now it's a different background. Okay, so and that was, guys, that was not a tough thing to sort out. Now maybe having looked at this, just a bit of a deeper red might have been better, so I could jump back into Photoshop and just redo it and save it under the same name. But all I did to further enhance the way the active class looked was I went in to Photoshop, just altered the coloring in the background so I didn't have to rebuild an entirely new graphic. That's a lot of work, right? And I'm trying to teach you guys to be marketers, not to spend hours on one little graphic. It's just simply not that important. How often do you really look at that when you're on websites, right? I just wanted I wanted it to be more obvious when they were on one of the 6 main menu items. So now that's the active class. And if I went to index, it would have changed there too, because I changed it in my CSS. Okay, so a lot of stuff I know at once, but this is what we've covered here then. We've talked about the class style. We've changed it around a lot. In the process, we've talked about how you can alter rollovers and just get them. If you want an image to come up in the rollover, instead of just changing the font size, change the background of the rollover, right? I could have made that part of the rollover too. So here, you know what? Let's just do that really quick at the end. So if I further wanted to enhance this, okay, I know this background code worked for the hover, or sorry, worked for the active. Stick it in the hover so that you have it for the rollover too. Okay, and now in live view, all right, when I go over, it makes it big and it puts the different background in. Cool, eh? Okay, so a lot of CSS at once, but all really just about the same stuff, right? We were reviewing the basics of how this all works. So CSS class styles, altering basic CSS and rollovers, and we fixed the broken links at the beginning of this using Control F because I had lost my image links and they weren't coming up in CheckLink site-wide because they're not always that friendly. And in the process of doing this, we also talked about the basics of the A tag. So just to conclude here at the very end, I will jump back into my style code and I'll go to code view so it's a bit bigger. So I talked about the A and the 4 parameters there, like the 4 different things you can do to A. So sometimes a code has different things that you can do according to the same tag. This one has hover, visited, and sometimes instead of making a class for active, you might see A:active. So those are the 4 basic methods you can use to alter the way your links look. This one only has A and then A hover. Okay, let's say I didn't want it to underline. Remember at the very end, so it's just a bit of review here. I mean, you know how on live view my links are underlining? Okay. Go to text decoration none and give it a different background color or something like that. So when people sit over the links, they know. So that one, just so you don't mess it up, that one might be a little easier to do under all. So just so you make sure you get everything in there the right way. We go to background color. Choose some kind of red. So now when we see, oh wait, no, you know what? Now when I roll over it, I can't really read the text that well. That's fine. Go into type and make the text white when you roll over it. See that? Guys, this is not, a lot of you have been asking me about this. This is not tricky stuff. So there's a bunch of review of CSS and how to handle those active classes. I know we took about half an hour to do that. It probably shouldn't have taken that long, but I think you'll be a lot better off now when you're